Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Brian and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Brian Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. And that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Kevin, what's going on, buddy?
Hi, Bryant. Good evening. How are you tonight?
I am well, thank you.
Excellent.
I'm ready for some exciting conversation. Did you bring any with you?
I did. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
But I have a question for John. John,
Who's John?
John.
We haven't introduced John yet. You just whoop. There goes the cat right out of that bag.
I have to jump right into it. All right. John, are you a professional football fan by chance?
Oh, I used to be until it became too political.
Ah, okay. So yeah. You mean
I used to be a big
Pittsburgh
Steelers fan, and but
no.
I didn't want to be lectured politically.
Damn. We're Steelers fan. There we go. We checked another box. Sorry about that, Kevin.
That's all right. Boy, that one backfired. Bryant's a Steelers fan, but you weren't aware of this, John. Bryant was asking me because he was excited about how the Washington Redskin Commanders are doing, and shaping up for a new season. And I just was going to give him a quick rundown. The bad part is Brandon Scherf got traded, the best right tackle in pro football, and now he's gone. But Carson Wentz is shaping up, and things are looking good.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you happy about it?
Well, you are, I know, because you're getting excited about it.
Oh, I haven't even been really tuned into football. So,
John, we have a banter back and forth. He's not a Redskins fan or Commanders or whatever you choose to call them. They're the Redskins forever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna tell people who John is.
Please
right?
do.
We got
Please
John
do.
out here on the line.
I just wanted to bring him in.
Right now, he's just known as John. But who this gentleman is Dr. John Degarmo, and I got to call this out. This is part of his bio, and I think it's relevant. He's born in 1969, so that makes him straight up in the graybeard category. Of course, I don't believe that he chooses to sport one, but he could. He's a leading international foster care expert, consultant, TEDx speaker, TED Talk speaker, and just worn a bunch of different hats in his life. He's been traveling, touring the world, singing and dancing with an international supergroup, been a DJ, had a gig in teaching English and drama, both in high school and college, and also did some work in the professional wrestling arena, and I'm certainly intrigued or interested in hearing more about how all of those things kind of are interwoven. But he's an author of several different books about foster care, and definitely an expert in that subject. He's the director of the Foster Care Institute, and he and his wife Dr. Kelly Degarmo, are recipients of the Good Morning America's Ultimate Hero Award and the Up with the People Everyday Hero Award. So, John, welcome. Dr. Degarmo, thank you for taking time to be here. We certainly appreciate it. We're sorry to those folks that are watching on video tonight. We're having some technical malfunctions with Wi-Fi in his location, and so you're going to have a static photo of him on the video. But maybe I'll play with that photo. I'll put a beard on it, gray beard or something. Anyways, welcome, John. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity, gentlemen. Thank you.
So, John, right out of the blocks, I enjoyed learning about you this week as we were preparing for this podcast. And one of the things that struck me is just how much you have going on in life. And I mean, you are speaking, and you are writing, and you are coaching. And it's not like you're coaching on one thing. You're a life coach. You're a book, how to write a book coach. You're how to be a speaker coach. I mean, there's all kind of stuff going on. And how do you do it all? And then all of that on top of it all is your expertise on the foster care, which is incredible. Yeah, tell us a little bit about all that.
Well, none of those things are something I planned on doing in my life. None of those things are something I even envisioned doing, actually. But, God's got an interesting way of weaving one's life if you give your life over to Him, and that's what I tried doing. And here I am doing all those things you said. My wife and I have had the blessing of having over 60-plus children come to live through our home. And I've really devoted my entire life to making the foster care system, which is very broken, making the system better for all the children that are suffering in our nation. As you and I are talking right now, there are 5 million kids in our nation who are witnessing domestic violence in their house. We got 300,000 kids who are victims of human trafficking in our country. We got 500,000 kids in foster care. So there's a lot to do. And you ask, how do I do it all? I'm not quite sure. Faith, to be sure. My wife and I are full partners in regards to all that we do, through her support, and I try my best.
Yeah. Well, clearly you're having some impact, because the lives of the children, to be the very least, are the ones who are benefiting greatly. And I remember one of the things you said on one of the videos that I watched was just providing an atmosphere of love and caring.
Right.
That was sometimes it's not all they need, but it's what they need the most.
Imagine.
It is what they need the most. Sadly, so many kids don't get that in their homes.
Yeah, imagine what the world would be like if every home had that focus, regardless of whether there were foster children present.
Yeah.
It would be a different place, to be sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So, John, how did you get to where you are today, right? So you said this isn't what you planned on doing. Kind of walk us through, how'd you go from singing and dancing and traveling the world and doing something in the professional wrestling arena to doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking. So I met my wife, as you said, traveling the nation, singing and dancing, and she's from Australia. So moved over there for a while, and our first child died of a condition called anencephaly, or some pronounce it anencephaly. It's a condition where the brain or skull never truly forms, and she was in labor for 92 hours. And I turned my back on a lot of things after that, including my faith. I was just filled with a lot of anger. So we moved back eventually to the United States, and I was pursuing at that time what I thought was my true career path, and that was, as you mentioned, professional wrestling. Yes, that's right. As a kid, I really loved the theatrics of it. I loved the drama of it, the storytelling of it. So I did that for a while. While I was not a wrestler, I was what's known as a manager. So I would get in the ring and help the bad guy to victory, so to speak. But then I started also teaching in a rural high school in Georgia. I noticed a lot of kids coming through my classroom who had issues of attendance and behaviors and academics. And then I asked, why is this? Why are so many people in this small town have these issues? And then I met a lot of their birth parents, and I recognized it really started in the home. You mentioned the love. Well, I mentioned in the home that so many kids are being abused or neglected or abandoned, and so I said to my wife, we have 3 healthy children of our own at this point. We've lost our first child. How can we help other kids? Because my wife and I had always led a life of serving others. So how can we help these other kids? And that opened up the doors to becoming a foster parent, to getting my doctorate in it, to writing all these books. And now I'm just driven because some of the negative experiences we've had as foster parents for some of these kids. We've seen some real tragic cases that would curl people's toes and shock them. So, I've really devoted my life to helping these children. I think back to beginning of March, April, May of 2020, when we as a nation decided to close our schools. And we as a nation decided to stop everything, I think, out of fear. And my biggest concern at that time, in April, May of 2020, was the mental health aspects of these kids. I was far more concerned about the mental health dangers of these children than I was of any virus. I was far more concerned about these children not being able to go to school, instead being locked up with their abuser, with their rapist, with their person who's hurting them. Now, for so many kids, school is their safe space. School is a place they go to escape the verbal or physical or sexual abuse. School is a place where they get 2 meals a day. School is a place where there's someone actually saying kind words to them. Instead, we we lock them in their homes, and we see the results. Teenage suicides up, teenage depression's up, addictions are up with kids. It's just it's a mess right now.
This is really interesting because I've never heard anybody articulate that side of it quite so clearly. And the reason that it struck me so much is because and I'm going to separate the pandemic and all that from the schools for the moment, just to make a point. And the point is the broader spectrum of what's going on in public schools right now, to me, is quite disturbing. And so when I see when I see and hear about what kids are being taught at a very young age, I'm telling you, and I don't anymore, but if I had, school-age children, elementary, junior high school-age children that were in school, I would not send them to public schools. Under no circumstances would I do that today, just because of what I think. And John, what I'm hearing you saying is, even with all some of that bad stuff, and maybe you're not saying, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, and I certainly don't want to do that, but wow, if you are living in one of these homes, which was not been in the forefront of my mind, that you are being raped, you are being beaten, you are being abused in some way, going to school is actually an escape from all that. I hadn't really thought about it that way. Can you comment on that a little bit?
It is an escape for these children. As I said, it's their safe space.
Okay.
So many kids, as I said, go to school, and for 8 hours a day, they are away from their abuser. I said earlier, 5 million children experience domestic violence in their homes every year, which means when they go to school, they can escape that even for a short period of time. These kids come from an environment where they're constantly belittled verbally, where they're being raped or they're being hit. Some of these kids go to school for food, and so we locked them in their homes for 2 years for some of these kids with their abuser. And there are many stories of these children who have sadly have died as a result.
Wow, goodness.
Yeah, I man, how many years is it going to take to recover from that? And certainly there's some that because
many generations
they made, how many generations exactly? And some of these kids that tragically made a decision to end their life, obviously they'll never recover from it.
Teenage suicides up 51% because of what we did to these kids.
Wow,
is that right? Wow.
And that should shock each of us. And I may be criticized for this, but I lay the blame on those people who made that decision rather hastily to deny these children the opportunity to have a safe space.
Right.
Yeah, they certainly didn't think that out completely. I think their intent was to protect them, and didn't have a full understanding of how protecting them in one area was exposing them to greater harm in others.
Right.
So, John, when you have a child come into your home that you choose to accept, and another video I heard you talk about, you make a decision pretty quickly by asking some questions about the child and whether or not your home is the right one for them. When someone comes into your family and into your home, how long do they typically stay there? What is kind of I have no idea.
Well, the average time a child stays in foster care, on average, is roughly 18 months. Now, I've had children as short as 1 day, and I've had children as long as 2 years, and everything in between. But on average, it could be about 18 months.
So how do you process the emotional experience of that? Because I would think, and this is my own instinctual reaction to this, that there's a relationship that develops while these kids are living in your home. So how do you process that departure? Or for all intents and purposes, it's a loss.
You're absolutely right. It is a loss. I hear so many people say to me, Dr. John, I couldn't do what you do. It would hurt too much to give the kids back. For whatever reason, whether they're going back to their birth parents or biological family members through reunification, whether they are being adopted, whether they're going to another foster home, whether they're transitioning out or aging out, whatever it might be. It is a time of loss for foster parents, and there's grieving, to be sure. It's because when the child comes into your home, into my home, another foster parent's home, they need, I think, three things. They need stability, They need structure, but what they need more than anything else is something you touched on earlier, and that is unconditional love. These kids need us to love them with all that we have, because we might be the first person who's ever loved them in some fashion. So when they do leave, yes, it breaks our hearts. But at the same time, I think that's a gift that we're giving these kids, because again, we could be the first person they've loved. So years later, after they left our home, they're going to take with them the reminder and the memory of the fact that in their lifetime somebody did love them. So there's a lot of grieving, yes, and it's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Most rewarding thing I've done, but it is hard.
Yeah, that's because that was one thing that definitely occurred to me. I was like, how do you do that? Because it would definitely feel like that to me.
And John, if you were going to communicate something to our listening audience that you just, you wanted to make sure that people knew about in the world that you live in, whether it's a fundamental concept or a thought or a principle or something like that, what would that or those few things be?
Well, I would mention first that child abuse happens in every single community in our country, in our nation. And human trafficking happens in every single community in our nation. I often call human trafficking America's ugly secret. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to address it because it makes us feel uncomfortable. So we address other things instead. So we turn a blind eye to it. So I want people to know that it is happening, maybe even in your neighborhood, and perhaps within your family. Maybe somebody in your family, one of your relatives is doing it. So I want people to recognize it, and then I want them to recognize that while not everybody can be a foster parent, everybody can help a child in some way. And I wrote a book called The Church in Foster Care, and I believe that today's faith-based organizations, their next mission field is the foster care mission field. I've been to Mexico and Honduras and Nicaragua, and those have been incredible experiences. But there's a child in crisis right within our community. I call it mission within a mile. So faith-based organizations and people of faith can help in some way, whether it's giving hygiene items filled with bags filled with hygiene items or school supplies, whether it's mentoring or tutoring the children, whether it's buying them clean clothes when they arrive at a home. There's so many ways people can help. So that would be my message, that everybody can take part in some way, because the government can't do it by itself. We've seen that. We have certainly seen that. So it's time for our people of faith to step up and say, you know what, I can change a life in some way.
You sure can. And one of the things that I did also in prep for this was I went through, I did some research on children that are famous, that have been through the foster care program or were adopted or both. In many cases, both of those things happened. And I'm sure you have your list of favorite children. And I suppose most of them probably are perhaps children who've gone through your own home. But I think about Steve Jobs. I think about Cano Reeves, or however you say how do you say his name? Cano. So Babe Ruth, Eleanor Roosevelt, Simone Biles, Leo Tolstoy. These are some names of.
It took me a second to process what you were asking there. Keanu Reeves.
Thank you. Keanu Reeves. Yeah, and he lived in, I think, 5 or 6 foster homes throughout his upbringing.
Yeah.
And so, John, do you have some folks like that? Is it just the kids that you have worked with and you see them turning into adults? And I'm sure not every case is perfect, but I hope at least some of them are.
Well,
right word, but
I have no celebrities who have come through my home.
Right.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet. Right.
But I've had some success stories. Yes, I have had some success stories. I think of just a wonderful girl. Sadly, she had a horrible life. When she was 9 years of age, her family was killed in Romania, and she bounced around 3 different adoptive homes across the United States over the course of 9 years, between the age of 9 and 17, and experienced tremendous abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse from these 3 families who promised to love her forever. And when she came to us at 17 years of age, after 3 families had abandoned her, after they said they would teach her English and be her forever family and love her forever, she had tremendous issues of trust and attachment, and of course she should.
Right.
And we tried to adopt her, but at the time I was thinking we were actually going through our first adoption, and I said to my wife one night, I said, here's this girl who's 17 years of age, very much a part of our family, huge issues of attachment and trust, but where will she go on Christmas or Thanksgiving? Who will she call when she's a flat tire on a Sunday night? Who will take her soup when she's not feeling well? And every child deserves a family, right? But she sabotaged the adoption, as she should have, because to her adoption meant abandonment and rape. And we hit a real rough spot after that. But now she is a wonderful mother. I mean, just a fantastic mother to 2 children. Getting married, she's got a fantastic job as a caseworker, and she just astounds me how well she's done, because the statistics are so grim for children in foster care. When they leave the system, 55% will drop out of school, and that's high school. 65% end up homeless. 75% end up incarcerated. Only 6% will go to college, and only 2% will graduate with a 4-year degree. So the statistics are grim.
Bet.
And so she has beaten all that, and she just she inspires me.
You bet.
John, I want to back up a little bit. If I heard you correctly, you and your wife decided to become foster parents and go down that path after you had your own 3 children, right? And had lost a child.
That's right.
As well.
Yes. The first one died, then we had 3 other ones. That's right.
Yeah. So how kind of walk me through how that works, right? So you and your wife, I don't know how old the children were at the time, but I'm thinking about a family that has children, and maybe this applies in a couple different arenas, right? So when you decide to become a foster parent and you already have kids, how's it going to affect them? How are they involved in the decision-making process? Are they, et cetera? And then you could also maybe overlay that same template into an expanding family that has, one child, and now they're going to have another one. And, how does that affect the children that are there, and how can you help better, set them up and equip them for welcoming someone new into their home? If that makes sense.
Sure. Our kids at the time were 6, 4, and 3. And we had a lot of discussion, a lot of prayer about it. And for the longest time, for the first few years, I should say, we made the conscious decision of not having a child come in our home that was older than our other kids. But I think maybe it's the 4th year that went out the window. Yeah, there's so many of because as a foster parent, you got to kind of roll with it. When the phone call comes, you got to make a quick decision. So when we have that phone call, we discuss with our kids. We let them know what's going on. We take their pulse, if you will, and if we feel it's not the right time, then we will say no. But we've had as many as 11 in our house at the same time. We've had 7 in diapers at one time. Wow. And I believe that all of my children, I've adopted 3 from foster care as well. So I have 6 kids now. And I believe that every one of my kids, while none of them may be a foster parent, I really believe that all 6 of them will lead a life of serving others in some way, because they have seen in their own home children who have been abused, children who are suffering. They've seen trauma up close on a daily basis, and they've helped these children heal just by simply being a family, just by simply playing with these kids. Play therapy goes a long ways. And I think my children are much more cognizant of what other people might be going through or suffering from. They recognize bullying quickly, and each of them will say no to it immediately. When others are bullying others, they stand up for the victims, and they all are very compassionate towards others. And I think a lot of that comes from their experiences they've had. Now, it's been hard. Sure, there have been some times where my kids have said, "Dad, I need a break." Okay, all right, we hear you. We'll take it.
Yeah. And how do you go from you have a child in your home as a foster care child, and then make the decision to adopt? I mean, that's obviously they're going from on average an 18-month stay to a permanent part of your family. I mean, that's a big deal. And
so the birth parents have to go through what's known as the birth parents have their they have a number of things they have to do. Okay, and if they're unable to meet the requirements, then after a certain period of time, and time goes by, then there's known something as TPR, or termination of parental rights. So after the parental rights have been terminated by the court, then there's often a search within the area for any biological family member who might wish to adopt the children. And if there's none found, then the foster parents are able to adopt the child. Now, I've adopted 3. I've also had 4 failed adoptions, which means for some reason the adoptions did not go through. And that's devastating. Let me tell you, that's devastating.
Oh, yeah.
But I really see in my life there's no difference between. There's no label. I don't have a foster, a biological, or adoptive children. They're all my kids.
Right.
If you were looking at my kids, you'd see they're a mixture of wonderful colors. So we don't divide ourselves into that category either. There's no black child or a white child. We don't do that either. We're all in our house. We're all the same color, just different shades of God's skin.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to ask another question related to the sort of the tagline of our podcast, which is passing on the wisdom of the ages. And there's all kind of stuff in here that we've already talked about that are, that falls into that category. But now that we've talked about it a little bit, and now that I've thrown that tagline out there to you, is there something that strikes you about the wisdom of what you're doing, the wisdom that we can pass on, that folks can sort of leech onto? That would be of interest to them with respect to your life, your subject, your family, all of that?
Well, let me tell you, I've learned so much from the kids that have come to my home. I am a far better person for every child that's come to my home. Has every placement been perfect? No. There have been times where I thought, I can't do this. I'm exhausted. I'm worn out. I'm weary. I'm emotionally burned out. I'm grieving. I'm suffering from compassion fatigue. There have been times where I just throw my hands up and frustrated with the system. There are times where I just thought, I can't do this anymore. At the same time, as I mentioned, every child's made me a better person in some way, and I've learned something from every child. And I think we all can. If we actually listen to children, we can learn so much from them. And one of the things I try to do is I try to protect that innocence that children have. So many kids have come through my home have had that innocence ripped away. I think of the 4-year-old girl who was brutally raped over and over and over again by her grandfather. And he was actually producing children through his daughter, because he's raping his own daughter to produce children. I think of the 3-year-old child who had cigarette burns on his roof of his mouth and his genitals by his mother. These people sworn to protect them are abusing them. So they had their innocence ripped away, and they have to learn how to trust somebody again, and that takes time for these children. And I've learned so much from them. I think we all can.
Yeah, man, that's some disturbing stuff that you shared there. I think
it is disturbing, but I think people need to recognize that this is happening. All around us. We just don't want to talk about it because, as I said earlier, it makes us feel uncomfortable. So we talk about the latest reality show. We talk about politics, talk about sports, entertainment. We don't focus on what I think is most important. I work with legislators in Washington, D.C., and I continue to tell them the relevancy, the urgency of these issues, because these aren't goods and services. These are the lives of children at stake.
Yeah. And as the, you're talking about that 4-year-old that was victimized by her grandfather, as a grandfather of 3 granddaughters, I can't even imagine what would motivate somebody to carry out that kind of abuse on a child, especially as
here's the hard part. Here's another hard part. Now, as a person of faith, I can't judge that grandfather. I have to remind myself that God loves that grandfather just as much as he loves me. And my sins are no smaller than his sins. And he's a child of God as well. That is tough for me at times.
Yeah, that could definitely be challenging because I'm kind of on a different level there. I'm thinking there's a special place in hell for people like that.
Yeah, but look, I have to remind myself, look at the plank in my own eye.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I salute you for being able to do that, because that's challenging. That'd be a hurdle for me to get there, I think.
Yeah, I'm really spinning on that one. My brother is a retired now, prison warden. And you may know this, John, but there's a special place in prison for inmates who abuse children, and it's not a good place. And so even there, they know that you don't do that to children. And so I think there's something about the human experience that realizes we got to protect children. And so, yes, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that sin is sin and it's all equally bad. But, behavior is something that we can pay attention to and even legislate.
Absolutely. You know what? Sadly, so many of these kids who've come through my home, it's generational. I look at 2 of the 3 I've adopted, 3rd generation foster care. Their parents and grandparents were also in the system, and the system failed them. It just goes from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
This is again where the government can't fix all the problems. This is where people of faith need to step up and say, it's time for us to take this mantle of responsibility upon our shoulders, or, if you want to be biblical, this yoke upon our shoulders.
Yes, man, you can't say that enough. And I think as a society, in general, we need to take more responsibility for who we are and what we do, and look out for our communities, because I think we've, over the years, have become way too reliant on thinking that the government's going to do it for us, and that just
and look where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. So when you were talking about some of the emotional roller coaster that you have to go through and have gone through, one of the questions that I have for you, John, is how do you take care of you? Because you are responsible for taking care of all these other people, and I've said many times that you can't truly care for everyone else and have that be a sustainable function when you're not taking care of you. So what do you do to take care of you?
You're absolutely right. I tell foster parents all the time, if you can't care for you, you can't care for the kids. Well, for me, I find things that are therapeutical for me. I love the garden. So going outside and gardening is an opportunity for me to step away from it. A lot of prayer. Also, I rely upon my wife. Sometimes I'll just tag her off and say, you're on. People will say to me, did you watch this movie on foster care? Did you watch that TV show on foster care? And I say no. I always say no. Why not? I said, well, I live that lifestyle. When I turn the TV on, for me, it's escapism. I had to find something that's completely. I love Andy Griffith, and I love Lucy. I love the old black and white TV shows that just are me funny. It makes me. I mean, I'm able to escape into that.
Right.
I am a sports nut. I do love college basketball. So I find things that I'm able to just, for a brief time, escape from it, because when I come home from work, and these children who are suffering have issues of attachment, issues of trust, anger management, sleeping disorders, eating disorders, whatever it might be. It can be exhausting.
You bet. Well, John, if somebody listening to this wants to learn more, and I don't know, reach out to you or email you or go to some other place that you think is a good landing spot for people to learn more, do you want to tell us about that? How can they get a hold of you, or where should they go, or what should they read?
Oh, thanks for asking. So online, just go to the Foster Care Institute, or just search Dr. John Degarmo, foster care expert. I'm on all the social media, YouTube, my website. If someone's considering becoming a foster parent, there's a book called Fostering Love, One Foster Parent's Journey. It's my first book, and it was a memoir. I wanted to write a book that didn't sugarcoat foster parenting, told it from my foster father's perspective of the highs and lows, the emotional roller coaster that it is. Lots of laughter, lots of tears in it. Just gives a different perspective of this is what it's really like. And I mentioned earlier, it is the most challenging and the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to care for these 60-plus kids in my home.
You bet.
Yeah. God bless you for doing that, man.
Absolutely.
So I got to ask you this, because you mentioned, I think you said something about reality TV and, folks watching that. If I read correctly, I think there's something in your bio about you and your family being on the TV show Wife Swap. Did I imagine that, or did I read that?
You are correct. We've actually had a few reality shows reach out to us. We actually had a pilot for a reality TV show based upon our foster parenting, and so when Wife Swap called us up, again, we get lots of phone calls. Here's a guy from Michigan. She's from Australia. He worked in professional wrestling. Their family's very, very colorful. They've had 60 plus kids. They're living in the deep South. It's got to be a story. So we get lots of phone calls. So when Wife Swap called up, I said, "Shame on you. That's a terrible show. Are you kidding me? No, we want to do a show based on current affairs." They said. I said, "No, we want to do social issues." So my wife and I thought, well, if we can show what it's like to be a foster parent or to be an adoptive parent, if we can shed some light on those myths and misconceptions that are associated with it, we did it, and it was an experience.
That's it. That's it. End of story. It was an experience. Now, it was one episode, or was there several episodes? Or
no, there was one. If you look up Degarmo Wife Swap, I will. Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you watch the 5-minute trailer, anybody that sees it pretty much says, "Oh my gosh!" It has to deal with my wife and the child, the other family. When that child says, "I don't want you to go. I want you to be my real mommy." It was not something we were expecting.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it now.
Yeah.
I didn't have the opportunity to do it yet, but I will definitely tune in, check it out. That's cool. Anything else like that you guys have experienced that you've been able to? You said there's several that have called, but have you engaged in any others?
No. As I said earlier, we're all set up to do a show, and then on one of the major networks. But the Duggar incident happened, the Duggar family, and that TV. I don't know if you recall that, but there was some. So the TV network said no to big families. There have been several called, and we are focusing on our own children at this time. I have been blessed to. I've got a dear friend of mine. Her name is Jen Lilly. She's a Hallmark movie actress, GAC Films, a foster adoptive parent as well. Her and I are doing a lot of things together. And she calls herself the celebrity, and I'm the doctor. And we're actually writing a book together, doing a lot of stuff in DC together. So she keeps my Hollywood quotient.
Nice. You have to give us a shout out. You get up to DC. We'll meet you for lunch or something.
And I every day, so all the gray you can't see.
Right. Yeah. No, that's why I had to call that out, because you had your year of birth in your bio, and I was like, yeah, he's definitely in the graybeard category. He just chooses not to have one.
Right.
There you go.
No doubt. Very good. So what have we? And I know you're on a little bit of a timeline tonight, John. So what have we not asked you that you definitely want to share with the folks that are listening?
No, I think you've covered it all. I really believe you do. Oh, why do kids come into foster care? Mainly because of neglect. A lot of abuse as well. Abandonment. Those are the three main reasons. It's astounding how many children in our nation are being neglected. We call ourselves the greatest nation in the world, and I mentioned earlier 5 million kids, domestic violence in their homes, and that's risen. We are at a critical time right now when it comes to our nation's children on so many different fronts. They're being assaulted moment by moment by social media, by online technology, by political agendas, if you will, and if we don't get a handle on this, we're going to lose a generation.
I think we're going to lose more than that. We're not going to lose a generation. We're going to lose a nation.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, I believe that when this country was founded on this country has its warts and hairs big time, but it also was founded on a sort of moral true north foundation, and that has come and gone over time. But right now, it's under severe attack. Everything's relative, and the just the true north that defines us as a culture is very important. And right now it's kind of all over the place. And that leads to chaos and anarchy and just sort of the end of our country as we know it if we're not careful.
All right. So I thought of one last question. If there's folks out there that are interested, after hearing this, or maybe they were already, and this has kind of, led them down the path even more, they're interested in reaching out and figuring out more or learning more about being foster parents. And I know this may vary state by state, but where do they go to get introduced to the system and become eligible, or at least start down the path of becoming foster parents? Can you?
A quick search online will bring into their local foster care agency, whether it's a state-based one, whether it's a private agency, whether it's a faith-based agency, and they just call them up and begin the process.
Gotcha.
And I also talk about it. There's a great deal of information on how to do that at my website, the Foster Care Institute. But again, a quick search online, contact your local foster care agency or child welfare agency. Determine if you want to go state-based or faith-based.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, thank you, John. This has been, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how it was going to go, but it has been extremely helpful and extremely interesting.
Yeah, definitely enlightening and informative.
Yeah.
And somewhat, some of the information somewhat disturbing in nature. And I appreciate you calling that out, because no doubt those are things that our society is not talking about and not bringing attention to when we absolutely should be.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the platform. I appreciate the great work that you guys are doing, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right. You're certainly welcome.
Dr. John Degarmo.
Yes, indeed. And thank you. We're going to close this thing out, and then we'll get you to hold on for a minute after that. But I'm going to reach over here and hit this button, Kevin. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
You sure?
I'm ready.
All right.
Just do it. Just do it.
Should I say something like this?
Yeah.
No matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, make sure between this podcast and the next, you take time to enjoy the ride.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. Please subscribe so you'll receive notification when new episodes are available. To learn more about the Graybeards, visit their website, graybeardchronicles.com.